People who are no longer bound by NDAs, what are some surprising secrets that you can expose? In a tech support role, one manager used to boast his team's average call times were the lowest in the company. While average call times were in the 12 to 17 minute range, his team was constantly under 10 minutes. His team was awarded multiple times and his strategy was adopted company-wide to all customer service and technical support teams, including our internal IT teams. That strategy was under a strict NDA, as we did not want to allow competitors to emulate it. When our call center would go bid on contracts, it became an awesome metric. Our customer satisfaction scores are on par, but we have call times 20 to 30% lower than our competitors. The dirty secret of the NDA that I was not allowed to disclose? Their big method? Just hang up on people. Straight up. Find a way to say okay, go ahead and do that and call back if it doesn't fix it. Then hang up. Don't wait for confirmation. Okay, so reboot your PC and your problem should be solved. Thanks for calling. Click. Eventually they came out with more useful metrics that track things like first call resolution, which absolutely shredded this company and they went out of business a year or two later. Next story. Manipulation of data to give false impressions of reliability was something I saw quite blatantly utilized with little repercussions. My company was struggling to meet on-time delivery schedules and for numerous years was as embarrassingly low as 40%. A new manager comes in and within months we are now boasting an on-time delivery rate on a brilliant 95%. Turns out all he did was change what constituted an on-time delivery. Each time we knew a product would be late, we'd notify the customer of the delay and ask them to confirm they still wanted the order. If they still wanted the product, the on-time delivery would be recorded against the new expected date as opposed to the original promised date. Company literature was being sent out boasting of our 95% on-time delivery, now amongst the highest in the industry, when in fact we were by that point meeting less than 30% of initial delivery schedule targets. It was so simple that I'm sure numerous companies are getting away with such underhand tricks. Next story. The private school I worked for was for students identified with giftedness. The owner of the school administered the giftedness test. Can you pay the tuition? You're gifted. Can your sibling pay? Them too. Your cousin? Neighbor? Kid you know across town? You're all gifted. Next story. About 20 years I signed an NDA with a very large record company regarding their attempts to get into selling their catalog online. Streaming, sales, etc. It was a minefield because they were still wary of pissing off high street retailers, and that's where the charts came from. These attempts were frustrated by their top-level corporate guys. One week they all went to an MP3 conference in Buenos Aires to get them up to speed. The thing is they spent so much time partying, the only talk which seemed to stick was the scare tactics about how teens could scrape MP3s from the web, and they could be copied and redistributed easily. When they came back, every item in the catalog was ordered to be scrubbed from the web. Number 30 seconds previews, nothing should be audible. Not a hint of audio. Lock it all down. Put all the tapes in a chest and seal it with concrete at the bottom of the sea. That's gonna make everyone go back to CDs. Good old profitable CDs. Next story. At my old job, Pam helped me reallocate my clients' ad scheduling so I can invoice out a little extra for the last month of December 2014, helping me hit my yearly budget. I got let go 2 weeks after that, and I believe the original plan was to fire me under the justification of missing my yearly budget. Instead I got a severance of $15,000. I believe Pam knew or heard what the lay of the land was and helped me out. Appreciate you, Pam. Next story. I worked at a cancer charity and half the people would order things for themselves and charge it to the charity. An eye-opening job for a 16-year-old. Next story. I worked for BuzzFeed and they told us to post on r/Askreddit and then steal content for our articles, and my BuzzFeed NDA says I'm not allowed to tell you all that. Next story. I was never under an NDA, but the hotel is under new ownership, so I guess I can say it now. The hotel had no internet connection starting around 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like clockwork, every night. I'd give if it was just a system fault or if it was cost cutting. But without internet, the security cameras didn't work or record anything. The fire alarm system doesn't work either. The alarms go off but it doesn't call for help. So if we had a fire that started at 3 a.m. for example, then unless someone else that's driving by calls it in, I have no idea what's happening. One night we had an assault happen in the parking lot. The police needed camera evidence and our cameras didn't record anything because the internet was out. So that was fun explaining to the detectives. Next story. I briefly worked at a university in South Florida in the late 90s and early 00s. I was chosen to be on an academic integrity team, basically reviewing claims of plagiarism and cheating and deciding between the 5 of us whether it is valid or not. We were made to sign NDAs when we accepted the invite to be a part of the team. There were 3 instances where an employee that was taking classes there clearly cheated, and the issue was brought to our attention. Those 3 times, the cheating was blatant. All 3 times, we were told to let it go, as it would look bad for the university to have it get out. I'm not sure if this is common for other universities, but at the time, I was under the impression that it was common practice everywhere. It was ultimately one of the main reasons I ended up quitting. I was and still am disgusted by it. Next story. I worked for a website creation company back in 1999, managing the website for a big brand, large bank that was sponsoring a round-trip paid ticket to the Super Bowl. I worked on the website that collected all the entries, and I posted the rules that the company's legal department wrote to describe the rules of the contest. A random winner was to be selected for the prize, and I wrote a software tool to randomly pick the winner to be used when the contest was over. When the contest ended, I was told to forget my tool, forget the rules, just look in the database and find someone in South Florida, where the Super Bowl was in 1999, so the company wouldn't have to pay for airfare. Next story. In Prince George's County, Maryland, county transit bus drivers are instructed following an accident they are not to speak to anyone until a supervisor arrives on the scene. An approved method for not talking, especially to other drivers involved, is to feign injury. There's actually money allotted to pay the fines related to wasting 911 and emergency resources, because analysts determined it was cheaper than costs associated with drivers accidentally admitting fault. There's also an entire audit and analysis team related to accidents because of the sheer volume of people who falsely claim to be on a bus during an accident. Edit, what an incredible response. To clarify the current PG County, the bus transit system is run by a company called RAP. They were hired during COVID, which was after I left the state. The company running the buses until 2020 was called Veolia. Next story. Hasbro has tried to make the following two films. Stretch Armstrong, a gritty reimaging starring Taylor Lautner, the Wolf from Twilight, with a Nolan's Batman feel. Candy Land, a LOTR-style epic for children starring Adam Sandler. Both got pitch packets made before ultimately being shelved. Last I heard, the Candy Land idea is still kind of alive. Next story. Fortune 500, real estate. Long time ago we know about the black mold problem. We always knew. We do not disclose it. We intentionally do not look into. We don't want to know exactly what kind it is, because if it's dangerous then we legally have to spend money to fix it. The only department that is allowed to talk about the black mold problem is press and PR, because only they know how to bury it correctly. That was not a great work culture. Next story. IT consultant of many, many winters. The most critical applications in banking, insurance and finance run on badly outdated machines held together by duct tape, prayers and compressing dust, standing in dark, wet corners and mostly forgotten basements. Also, those systems are written in the most obscure and long-dead programming languages, or even directly in assembler for a certain chipset, written by code wizards in their own idiosyncratic dialects, who are now long retired or even dead. Backup systems are mostly non-existent, or the data tapes are worn down to basically transparent tape. Even had a case around 2020 where a cleaning tape from '99 was still in the bay, due to the robot being faulty. If a cleaner or janitor pulls the wrong plug to find an outlet for their vacuum, there is a decent chance that whole branches or even institutions begins to crumble. Most of those systems will also never be updated, due to their legacy status, aka, we don't know what this is doing, or even how it is doing, what it is doing, but it is a critical part of our whole infrastructure and nobody dares to touch it, but we will never invest the necessary sums to analyze those systems, write documentation or even replace them. Edit. NDAs for companies I did projects for are long gone, but some of them are currently in an investigation process for fraud and tax evasion, so I won't disclose exact informations.